Have you ever loved someone so much you felt like your heart would burst? What if that love was forbidden, or lost, or taken away? What if the only way to escape the pain was to end it all? The medieval period, at times stretching from the 5th to the 15th century, was filled with tales of knights, ladies, and devastating passion. And sometimes that passion led to the ultimate heartbreaking sacrifice. Number 7. Juliet. The city of Verona shimmered under the Italian sun, a place of ancient grudges and fiery passions. Two great families, the Montagues and the Capulets, were locked in an endless bloody feud. Their hatred had stained the streets for generations, touching every aspect of life in the bustling city. Into this world of simmering animosity stepped a young woman named Juliet Capulet, barely 14 years old, with eyes that held the promise of a future she could not yet fully grasp. Her family, eager to secure their social standing, had arranged for her to marry Paris, a wealthy and respected nobleman. Juliet, a dutiful daughter, had no reason to resist, though her heart was untouched by any deep affection. But fate, in its cruel and often beautiful way, had other plans. A masked ball held by the Capulets brought together the city's elite. Among the uninvited guests was Romeo Montague, a young man from the rival house, known for his melancholy and his passionate heart. He had come to the feast on a whim, hoping to forget a previous fleeting love. The moment his gaze fell upon Juliet across the crowded dance floor, everything changed. It was an instant connection, a bolt of lightning that ignited a love so profound, so immediate, that it transcended the centuries-old hatred of their families. They spoke briefly, their words weaving a spell, and in that short exchange they found their souls' perfect match. They exchanged a kiss, a stolen moment of pure bliss. Unaware of the bitter irony of their identities, the revelation hit them like a physical blow. Romeo, a Montague; Juliet, a Capulet. The very names that should have extinguished their burgeoning love only seemed to deepen it. They understood the impossible chasm that separated them, yet the desire for one another was too strong to be denied. In secret, under the cover of night, Romeo scaled the walls of the Capulet orchard, seeking Juliet at her window. This iconic scene, recounted in many medieval versions of the story, became a testament to their desperate love. They vowed their devotion to each other, a commitment made under the silent stars, promising forever in a world that forbade even a moment. With the help of Friar Lawrence, a kind and pragmatic man who hoped their union might finally bring peace to the warring families, Romeo and Juliet were secretly married. The ceremony was simple, whispered promises exchanged in the quiet sanctity of the friar's cell, a desperate act of defiance against the world. For a fleeting few hours they were husband and wife, their love sealed, their hopes soaring. But joy in Verona was often short-lived. A street brawl erupted, drawing in Romeo's cousin Mercutio and Juliet's hot-headed cousin Tybalt. In a tragic turn of events, Tybalt killed Mercutio, and Romeo, driven by grief and rage, avenged his friend by striking down Tybalt. Prince of Verona, weary of the constant bloodshed, banished Romeo from the city. A sentence far worse than death, for the young lover Juliet's world crumbled. Her husband was exiled, and her parents, believing her grief was for Tybalt, decided to hasten her marriage to Paris, setting the wedding for just a few days away. Desperate and trapped, Juliet returned to Friar Lawrence, pleading for a solution that would save her from marrying Paris and from being unfaithful to her beloved Romeo. The friar, seeing her profound distress and her absolute refusal to betray her vows, devised a dangerous plan. He gave her a potent sleeping draught, a liquid that would simulate death for 42 hours. Her family would believe her dead, lay her in the Capulet tomb, and then once she awoke, Romeo would be there to spirit her away to a new life of freedom and love. Juliet, with unwavering courage born of her profound love for Romeo, agreed to the perilous deception. She returned home, put on a brave face, and drank the potion. The next morning, she was found seemingly lifeless, cold and still. Capulet household was plunged into mournful chaos, their wedding plans turning into funeral rites. Juliet was laid to rest in the ancient Capulet tomb. a place of silence and shadows. But the friar's careful plan, depending on timely communication, was tragically flawed. The message meant for Romeo explaining the deception never reached him. A series of misfortunes, a quarantined messenger, and the hurried pace of events conspired against their fragile hope. Instead, Romeo received news from his servant that Juliet was truly dead and lay in the Capulet tomb. The news shattered him, tearing apart his soul. He had lived for Juliet, and without her, life held no meaning. Consumed by an unbearable grief, a raw, aching void in his heart, Romeo made a swift, desperate decision. He sought out an apothecary and bought a deadly poison, resolving to join his beloved in death. He rode back to Verona under the cover of darkness, his mind fixed on his grim purpose. He arrived at the tomb, his heart heavy with despair. There he encountered Paris, who had come to mourn Juliet. A brief, violent skirmish ensued, and Romeo, in his desperation, killed Paris. He then entered the tomb, the cold stone echoing with his sorrow. There lay Juliet, still beautiful even in what he believed was death. Her features serene. He spoke to her, a final testament to their boundless love, a monologue of heartbreak and devotion. Kissed her cold lips, his own breath catching in his throat. Then, without a moment's hesitation, he raised a vial of poison to his lips and drank its contents. The venom worked quickly, searing through his veins, and Romeo, whispering Juliet's name, collapsed lifeless beside her. His love had led him to this final, irreversible act. Moments later, Juliet awoke. The drug was wearing off, and she slowly came back to consciousness in the chilling darkness of the tomb. Her eyes fluttered open, and the first thing she saw was the form of her beloved Romeo lying beside her. A surge of joy briefly filled her, quickly followed by a jolt of terror as she saw the empty vial clasped in his hand. The truth dawned on her with a crushing force. He had believed her dead, and had taken his own life to be with her. The horror and the profound sorrow that washed over her were immeasurable. She called out to him, shaking him gently, but he remained still. He was gone. The world without Romeo became a desolate, unbearable place. Her heart, once so full of love and hope, was now a shattered vessel of despair. She saw the dagger still sheathed in Romeo's belt, the very weapon that had caused her cousin Tybalt's death. She knew what she had to do. With trembling hands, she pulled the dagger free. "Oh, happy dagger," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "This is thy sheath. There rust and let me die." And with those words, she plunged the blade into her own chest. She sank down onto Romeo's lifeless body, embracing him one last time as life ebbed from her. Juliet, like Romeo, chose death over a life devoid of their forbidden but intensely real love. Their tragic story, recounted in various Italian noveses, long before it reached the stage, became a cornerstone of love and loss in the medieval imagination, inspiring countless poets and storytellers. For example, a version appears in Masuccio, Salernitano's Il Novellin, written 76, Historia, Novellamenti ritrovata di due nobili amanti in 1530, charting the enduring appeal of this tale of ultimate sacrifice for love. Their desperate, swift, and absolute act of suicide for love became a chilling testament to the power of a passion that defied all societal norms and even the very instinct for life. Number 6. Canis. The tale of Canace is one shrouded in the darkest corners of love's possibilities, a story that pushes the boundaries of acceptable desire and ends in an enforced yet heartbreaking suicide. It is found in the sprawling medieval poem Confessio Amantis by the English poet John Gower, a work completed in the late 14th century. Gower, writing in English, collected numerous classical and medieval stories, often using them as moral examples, and Canace's story is presented as a stark warning about the dangers of unchecked pity for her plight. Canis was the daughter of King Aeolus, the powerful ruler in ancient Greece and sister to Macareus. From their earliest childhood, a bond grew between Canace and Macareus that went far beyond sibling affection. It was a deep, consuming love, a forbidden passion that defied the laws of nature and society. They found solace and joy only in each other's company, their hearts entangled in a dangerous secret. As they grew older, this secret love deepened, becoming an overwhelming force that they could not or would not resist. Tragic truth was that their affection was born of a primal connection, a bond that in their eyes transcended the world's rules. They carried on their clandestine relationship, always under the cloak of night and hidden from the watchful eyes of their royal court. Their love was a desperate flame burning in the darkness, a joy constantly overshadowed by the fear of discovery. As is often the way with such fervent and forbidden desires, their love bore fruit. Canis became pregnant with her brother's child. This shocking development brought their secret to a terrifying climax. The prospect of revealing their transgression, the shame and the wrath of their father, loomed over them like a storm cloud. In a desperate attempt to conceal the truth, Canis hid her pregnancy from everyone, even from her attendants. When the time came for the birth, she delivered the child in secret in the dead of night in a secluded chamber. It was a boy, a testament to their forbidden love, a tiny, innocent life born into a world that would condemn him. Canis, filled with a mother's fierce love and an unbearable sorrow, immediately wrapped the newborn in purple cloth, a color traditionally for a child destined to be cast out. She placed him in a basket, hoping to secretly send him away, perhaps to be raised far from the judgment of their father and the court. But fate in this tale was a cruel observer. Her father, King Aeolus, either through suspicion or by sheer accident, discovered the presence of the newborn child. His rage was immediate and absolute. The violation of natural law, the stain on his royal house, the public shame that would undoubtedly follow, overwhelmed him. He demanded to know the father's identity. When the truth was revealed that his own son Macareus was the father, King Aeolus's fury knew no bounds. He was not merely angry, he was utterly disgusted and filled with cold, unforgiving wrath. His first act of vengeance was against the innocent child. In a horrifying display of his absolute power and disgust, King Aeolus ordered the infant to be torn from its mother's arms and cast out to be devoured by wild dogs. The cries of the helpless baby and the heartbroken pleas of Canace were ignored. The king, consumed by his desire to cleanse his family's honor, ensured the child's swift and brutal demise. This act of unspeakable cruelty broke Canace's spirit, leaving her hollowed out and despairing. The loss of her child, the fruit of her love, was a torment worse than any physical pain. Then King Aeolus turned his attention to Canace. He condemned her for her transgression. Deeming her an abomination, he delivered to her a bare sword, not as an instrument of mercy, but as an inescapable command. He did not execute her directly, but instead forced her to be the agent of her own demise, a final horrifying punishment for her sin. The choice was clear: take her own life or face a public and humiliating execution that would bring even greater shame upon her family. This act, though forced, became a suicide, driven by the consequences of an overwhelming forbidden love and the unbearable loss of its innocent fruit. Canace, her heart shattered by the death of her child and faced with the grim decree of her father, took the sword. She knew there was no escape, no forgiveness, no future. Her life had been irrevocably stained by her love and its tragic outcome. With a profound sorrow, she plunged the sword into her own body, a final, desperate act to escape the crushing weight of her grief and her father's merciless judgment. Her life, though ended by her own hand, was effectively taken from her by the cruel hand of circumstance and the unyielding societal norms of her time. Her story stands as a bleak reminder of the destructive power of love that defies all boundaries and the terrible price paid when such love is discovered. Gower presents her end as a tragic consequence, leaving the reader to reflect on the nature of passion and power. Number 5. Phyllis. The story of Phyllis is a heartbreaking testament to the perils of longing and the ultimate despair that can follow a broken promise. A tale often retold in the Middle Ages, notably by the Roman poet Ovid in his Heroides, and later by Geoffrey Chaucer, speaks to the utter devastation that can befall a woman abandoned by the one she loves, leading her to a tragic and self-willed end. Phyllis was a princess, the daughter of Cithon, king of Thrace, a land known for its rugged beauty and ancient myths. Her life was one of royal privilege, but her heart remained innocent and open. Her destiny was irrevocably altered when Demophon, son of the renowned Athenian hero Theseus, arrived on her shores. Demophon was returning from the Trojan War, having participated in the epic conflict that had captivated the ancient world. His ship, battered by a fierce storm, was driven off course and found refuge in Thrace. Phyllis, in her innocence and kindness, extended hospitality to the shipwrecked prince. She nursed his crew back to health, offering them comfort and succor. During his stay, Demophon, with his heroic lineage and charming demeanor, quickly captivated Phyllis's heart. He was a hero, a valiant warrior who had faced the perils of war. And to the sheltered princess, he represented a world of adventure and passion. Their love blossomed swiftly, a whirlwind romance fueled by the shared intensity of their unexpected meeting. Demophon, in turn, swore eternal love and devotion to Phyllis, promising to return to her after settling some urgent matters in Athens, particularly relating to his father's old age and the affairs of his kingdom. The farewell was tearful, filled with fervent promises. Demophon swore by all the gods that he would return by a certain date, a designated time marked by the waning of the moon. He gave her a special gift, a small box, to open only if he failed to return by the appointed time. Phyllis, clinging to his every word, believed him absolutely. Her world revolved around his return, her days filled with anticipation, and her nights with dreams of their reunion. She waited with an unwavering faith, gazing out at the vast indifferent sea, her heart swelling with hope at every passing ship. Days turned into weeks, and weeks bled into months. The promised date drew closer, the moon slowly completing its cycle, but there was no sign of Demophon's ship. Phyllis's hope, once so vibrant, began to curdle into anxiety, then into a gnawing fear. She walked the shores endlessly, her eyes straining against the horizon, her mind tormented by doubt. She sent messengers to Athens, desperate for news, but they returned with nothing but silence. Demophon, it seemed, had forgotten her. He had found new loves in Athens, or perhaps the allure of adventure had simply faded the memory of his vows. He was a hero, after all, accustomed to fleeting passions and grand gestures that might not always be followed through. As the final day of his promised return arrived and passed, Phyllis's heart shattered. The moon waxed and waned, completing its cycle, mocking her dwindling hope. The crushing weight of betrayal settled upon her. All her love, her patience, her unwavering belief had been for naught. Demophon was not coming back. He had forsaken her, leaving her alone with her profound despair. The future she had envisioned, the life she had dreamed of sharing with him, vanished like smoke, leaving behind an unbearable void. In her profound anguish, Phyllis made a decision. She could not bear a life without Demophon, a life filled with the bitter taste of his abandonment. The pain of his broken promise was too immense, too suffocating. In her grief, she sought out a tree, often described as an almond tree or a hazel tree, a symbol of nature's indifference to human sorrow. With a rope or a simple piece of cloth, she fashioned a noose. With a final, desperate breath, she hanged herself, choosing death as the only escape from the torment of her betrayed heart. Her act was a direct consequence of a love that was given freely and completely, only to be utterly cast aside. According to the myth, in a poignant and lasting symbol of her enduring love and tragic end, the gods, moved by her sorrow, transformed her into an almond tree, or sometimes a hazel tree. And in an additional layer of myth, it is said that when Demophon finally did return much later, and filled with remorse, he found her tree. As he embraced it, the tree burst into bloom. Even though it was not the season for flowers, a lasting testament to Phyllis's unbroken love, which still held a spark of life, even in death. Her story, though from ancient Greek mythology, found its way into the moralistic and narrative frameworks of medieval literature, embodying the sorrow of abandoned love and the ultimate tragic escape through self-destruction. Number 4. Daido. The majestic city of Carthage, gleaming on the North African coast, was the creation of a formidable queen, Daido. She had fled her tyrannical brother Pygmalion, who had murdered her beloved husband Canis for his vast wealth, vowing never to marry again. Daido dedicated her life to building a powerful, prosperous city from nothing, drawing exiles and refugees to her new home. She was a woman of unwavering resolve, a visionary leader, and her personal vow to her deceased husband was as strong as her dedication to her people. Her heart, she believed, was forever sealed against new love, guarded by the memory of Canis. But the fates and the powerful gods of Mount Olympus had other plans for Daido. A terrible storm, sent by the goddess Juno, drove the fleet of Aeneas, the Trojan prince and son of the goddess Venus, onto Carthage's shores. Aeneas was on a sacred quest, destined to found a new Troy in Italy, a city that would one day become Rome. Exhausted and heartbroken by their long wanderings and the loss of so many comrades, Aeneas and his men found refuge and hospitality in Daido's flourishing city. Daido, ever gracious, welcomed the Trojans. As Aeneas recounted the harrowing tale of Troy's fall and his long, perilous journey, Daido found herself increasingly captivated by his courage, his piety, and his noble bearing. The goddess Venus, eager to protect her son, intervened further, sending her son Cupid in the guise of Aeneas's own son, Ascanius. Cupid subtly inflamed Daido's heart with an irresistible passion for Aeneas, burning away her vow of celibacy and her commitment to Canis's memory. The love that grew between Daido and Aeneas was not merely human affection. It was a fated, divinely orchestrated obsession. They spent blissful months together in Carthage, the affairs of the city, and Aeneas's destiny momentarily forgotten in the intoxicating embrace of their love. They hunted together, feasted, and spent nights in tender companionship. Daido, against her earlier solemn vow, considered Aeneas her husband. Their love sealed, she believed, in a cave during a storm, a moment she interpreted as a true marriage. For Aeneas, however, while his affection for Daido was profound, his divine mission always loomed. He was destined for Italy, for a future that would shape an empire. The gods, particularly Jupiter, grew impatient. They sent Mercury, the messenger god, to remind Aeneas of his sacred duty, to chastise him for lingering in Carthage, seduced by mortal love. When a grander destiny awaited him, the divine command was absolute. The decision tormented him, tearing him between his love for Daido and his inescapable fate. But a hero, even a reluctant one, must obey the will of the gods. When Aeneas began to secretly prepare his ships for departure, Daido, her heart already heavy with foreboding, discovered his intentions. Her grief was immediate and overwhelming, quickly transforming into a fierce, wounded rage. She confronted him, pleading, reproaching, reminding him of his promises, of their shared love, and of the vows she believed they had exchanged. She highlighted the sacrifices she had made for him, the danger she now faced from neighboring African kings whose marriage proposals she had rejected for his sake. But Aeneas, though deeply affected by her anguish, remained resolute, bound by the god's will. He was merely an instrument of fate, he explained, not a free agent in this matter. Aeneas departed, sailing away from Carthage under the cloak of night, leaving Daido utterly devastated. The sight of his ships disappearing over the horizon broke her completely. Her world, which she had so carefully constructed, first as a queen and then as a lover, lay in ruins. Her pride, her love, her future, all had been sacrificed for a man who now abandoned her. The betrayal was too immense, the pain too profound to bear. Life without Aeneas, without the love that had consumed her, was an unbearable prospect. Daido, her mind clouded by despair and a burning desire for retribution, made a final, desperate decision. She ordered her servants to build a great pyre in her courtyard, ostensibly to burn all of Aeneas's discarded possessions and erase his memory from her life. In reality, it was to be her funeral pyre. With her attendants occupied by the preparations, she ascended the pyre. In her hand she held the very sword Aeneas had left behind, a painful reminder of their shared intimacy and his subsequent abandonment. With a final, desperate prayer, calling upon the gods to witness her sorrow and to curse Aeneas and his descendants. Daido plunged the sword into her own body. The sharp blade found its mark and her lifeblood spilled onto the pyre. As her life ebbed away, she was consumed by the twin fires of her love and her despair. Her sisters and attendants discovered her rushing to her side in horror, but it was too late. Her soul departed, freed from the agony of her earthly love, descending to the underworld. Her death was a tragic testament to the overwhelming power of love and its devastating consequences when broken by fate and duty. This dramatic suicide, as recounted by Virgil in his epic Aeneid, became a foundational narrative for medieval poets and scholars, influencing their understanding of tragic love and self-sacrifice. Her story was not just a classical tale, but a living example of love's ultimate destructive power throughout the medieval period. Number 3. Pyramis. In the ancient walled city of Babylon, where towering walls rose against the desert sky, two young hearts were caught in a cruel twist of fate. Pyramis, a young man of striking beauty and noble bearing, was consumed by a profound love for Thsby, a maiden of exceptional grace and loveliness. Their families, however, were locked in embittered generations-old rivalry, their houses separated by a single shared wall that ironically contained the only means of communication between the two lovers. This tragic love story, a cornerstone of medieval romance, found its most enduring form in Ovid's Metamorphoses, but its themes resonated deeply through the ages. Their love was born of proximity and an almost magnetic attraction. Their houses stood side by side, and through a tiny crack in the shared wall, a narrow chink that no one else seemed to notice, their voices found a path to each other. Day after day they would whisper through this tiny opening, pouring out their hearts, sharing their dreams, and lamenting the cruel barrier that kept them apart. This forbidden communication deepened their affection, turning a simple infatuation into an intense, desperate love. Their passion grew with every hushed conversation. Fueled by the very obstacles placed in their path, they yearned to be together, to touch, to embrace, to live a life free from the suffocating rivalry of their families. Eventually, the weight of their unspoken longing became unbearable. They devised a daring plan. They would escape their tyrannical parents, flee the city, and meet at a designated spot outside the city walls. Their meeting place was to be a famous landmark, the tomb of Canis, a legendary king under the shade of a white mulberry tree that bore fruit as red as blood. This tree was a familiar sight, its berries dark and rich, a symbol of the passionate secrets it had witnessed over centuries. They would meet there under the cover of night, beyond the reach of their feuding families, and from there they would embark on a new life together, free to love without fear. The night of their escape arrived thick with anticipation and danger. Thsby, bold and impatient in her love, arrived first at the tomb. The pale moonlight cast eerie shadows, and the air was still broken only by the rustling of leaves. As she waited for Pyramis, a sudden, terrifying sight emerged from the nearby woods. A lioness, her jaws still bloody from a recent kill, approached a spring near the tomb to quench her thirst. Thsby, her heart pounding with terror, instinctively fled, seeking refuge in a hollow rock. In her haste, a sheer veil, a delicate piece of cloth that had adorned her head, slipped from her grasp and fell to the ground. The lioness, after drinking from the spring, happened upon the fallen veil. In a casual gesture, or perhaps out of curiosity, the great beast tore and chewed the flimsy fabric, leaving it stained with blood from her recent meal. Then, sated the lioness, turned and disappeared back into the depths of the forest. Moments later, Pyramis arrived. His heart was light with the joy of anticipation, eager to finally be united with his beloved, but his joy quickly turned to horror. There on the ground lay Thsby's veil, torn and splattered with fresh dark blood, and nearby he saw the fresh paw prints of a large beast. His mind, clouded by terror and grief, immediately leaped to the most dreadful conclusion. He believed Thsby had arrived, been attacked by a fierce beast and devoured. He pictured her last moments, her delicate body torn apart, and his beloved lost forever. The shock and sorrow that washed over him were immense, suffocating. He blamed himself, cursing his own tardiness, his inability to protect her. He believed he had led her to her death, that his love had been her undoing. The idea of living without Thsby, without the woman who had captured his very soul, was an unbearable torment. His life without her seemed utterly meaningless, a hollow existence without light or hope. The bond they had forged through the wall, the dreams they had whispered, all came crashing down around him. Pyramis, consumed by despair, resolved to join her in death. He walked to the mulberry tree, his eyes fixed on the blood-stained veil. He drew his sharp sword, a weapon he had perhaps intended for protection on their journey, but now repurposed for a tragic end. He spoke to the veil a final, heartbroken farewell to his lost love, lamenting his cruel fate, and then, without hesitation, he plunged the sword into his own side. His lifeblood gushed forth, staining the white berries of the mulberry tree a deep, mournful crimson. The tree from that day forward would bear dark red fruit, a permanent memorial to the tragic love and sacrifice of Pyramis. His death, a direct and immediate act of suicide, born from his profound love and tragic misunderstanding, sealed the fate of two lovers, separated even in their final moments. His story, recounted in countless versions through the Middle Ages, served as a powerful narrative of love's intensity and the devastating consequences of mistaken perception. Number 2. Thsby. Tragic story of Pyramis and Thsby, as recounted by Ovid in his Metamorphoses and retold throughout the medieval period, is a double suicide, a testament to a love so profound that one could not exist without the other. While Pyramis's death is born of a devastating misunderstanding, Thsby's is a direct, conscious choice to follow her beloved into the realm of death, solidifying their eternal bond. As we know, Thsby, the beautiful maiden from Babylon, had fled in terror when a fearsome lioness appeared at their secret meeting place near the tomb of Ninus. In her panicked escape, she had dropped her sheer veil, a delicate piece of fabric that was later torn and blood-stained by the lioness. She had found temporary refuge in a hollow rock, her heart pounding against her ribs, waiting for the beast to depart. Once the lioness was gone, Thsby, trembling but driven by her yearning for Pyramis, cautiously emerged from her hiding place. Her fear was quickly overshadowed by her excitement to finally meet her lover. She approached the designated spot, her eyes searching for Pyramis. Instead of finding him, she found something far more horrifying. There, beneath the white mulberry tree, lay a young man, sprawled on the ground, lifeless. Her heart plummeted into her stomach, a cold dread seizing her. As she drew closer, the terrible truth slammed into her with the force of a physical blow. It was Pyramis. His body lay still, a sword plunged into his side, and dark blood, his lifeblood, staining the ground around him. A gasp escaped her lips, a sound of pure anguish. Her eyes then fell upon the familiar sheer veil lying discarded nearby, torn and stained with blood. Not his blood, but the blood of an animal. And then she saw the fresh paw prints on the soft earth. In an instant, the entire horrifying scene unfolded in her mind. She understood with chilling clarity what had happened. Pyramis had arrived, found her veil stained with the lioness's kill, and believed her dead. In his despair, his love for her so absolute, he had taken his own life. The realization tore through her a pain so profound it eclipsed even the terror of the lioness. Her beloved Pyramis, the boy she had whispered to through a wall, the man she had planned to flee with, was gone, and his death was a direct consequence of a misunderstanding that she had inadvertently caused. The guilt, combined with the crushing grief of losing him, was unbearable. The world suddenly lost all its color and meaning. A life without Pyramis was simply no life at all. The very idea of continuing to live, to face a future without him, was more terrifying than death itself. Thsby knelt beside his body, her hands trembling as she touched his cold skin. She saw the sword still protruding from his side, the instrument of his despair. Her eyes welled with tears, but her decision was swift and absolute. If he had died for her, if he had believed her gone and chosen to follow her into death, then she would follow him in truth. Their love, which had been forbidden in life, would be eternal in death. She would not be separated from him, not even by the grave. With a profound and heartbreaking resolve, Thsby pulled the sword from Pyramis's body. The steel, still warm with his life, felt impossibly heavy in her hands. She held it to her own chest, positioned it over her heart, directly over the very core of her love for him. As she prepared for her final act, she spoke to his lifeless form, a desperate farewell, a vow that they would be together forever. "Only death could part us," she whispered, her voice choked with tears. "But even death shall not divide us now." And with those words, Thsby plunged the sword into herself, a final, deliberate act of love and despair. She fell upon Pyramis's body, her last breath mingling with his. Her last sight, the face of her beloved. Their bodies lay intertwined, their love finally triumphant over the family feud that had tried to keep them apart. And the mulberry tree, which had earlier stained its berries with Pyramis's blood, continued to absorb the sorrowful essence of their double tragedy. From that day forward, its berries would forever be a dark, mournful crimson, a lasting natural monument to the passionate, ill-fated love of Pyramis and Thsby's ultimate act of suicide to be united with her love. This enduring image, often depicted in medieval art and literature, cemented their story as a timeless example of enduring love and its tragic, self-destructive power. Number 1. Isolde. The windswept shores of ancient Britain and the green valleys of Ireland bore witness to one of the most enduring and heartbreaking love stories of the medieval age. The tale of Tristan and Isolde. While not a direct suicide in a brutal sense, Isolde's death is a profound act of self-willed surrender to overwhelming grief, and a testament to a love that could not exist in a world without its other half. This legendary narrative, recounted in countless versions across Europe, from Thomas of Britain to Gottfried von Strasbourg, and later in the grand prose romances, speaks of an unbreakable bond, forged by magic and destiny. Tristan, a valiant knight, nephew to King Mark of Cornwall, was sent to Ireland to bring back the beautiful Princess Isolde, destined to be King Mark's bride. It was a perilous journey filled with dangers and deceit, but Tristan, ever courageous, succeeded in his mission. However, fate, or perhaps a mischievous maid, intervened in the most potent way. On the voyage back to Cornwall, Tristan and Isolde mistakenly drank a powerful love potion brewed by Isolde's mother for Isolde and King Mark. This was no ordinary drink. It was a potent draught of unbreakable eternal love, a magical bond that defied reason, loyalty, and all societal norms. From that moment on, their hearts were irrevocably bound. An intense, uncontrollable love consumed them, a passion that transcended their duties and the laws of the land. Isolde, though destined for the king, found her soul forever entwined with Tristan's. Their love was a secret torment, a joyous curse. They lived in constant fear of discovery, their illicit passion a dangerous game played under the watchful eyes of the court. Despite Isolde becoming Queen of Cornwall, her heart belonged entirely to Tristan. They met in secret, their stolen moments of bliss, always overshadowed by the looming threat of exposure and the pain of their forbidden circumstances. Their affair was eventually discovered. Not once, but many times, leading to heartbreaking separations and dramatic escapes. Tristan was banished from Cornwall, forced to wander in foreign lands, his heart aching for his beloved Isolde. Even in exile, he could not escape her image, her presence lingering in every thought. He even married another woman, Isolde of the White Hands, in an attempt to forget his true love, but the marriage remained unconsummated, his heart unable to truly connect with anyone but his Irish queen. Years passed, marked by longing and despair. Tristan, while fighting in a foreign land, suffered a terrible poisoned wound. It was a wound that festered, growing worse with each passing day, one that only Queen Isolde, with her famed healing skills, could cure. In a desperate plea, Tristan sent his loyal retainer, Canis, to fetch Isolde from Cornwall. He gave him specific instructions. If Isolde agreed to come, Canis was to return with a white sail. If she refused, he was to use a black sail. Tristan, weakened and fading, lay on his bed, his eyes fixed on the horizon, praying for a glimpse of white. Isolde, hearing of Tristan's dire state, immediately agreed to come. Her love for him was as strong as ever, undimmed by the years and the distance. She boarded the ship, eager to reach her beloved and save him. But even in his final, desperate journey, cruel fate played its hand. Tristan's jealous wife, Isolde of the White Hands, driven by her own pain and resentment, saw the ship approaching. As it drew closer, she maliciously lied to Tristan, whispering that the sail was black. Tristan, already teetering on the brink of death, consumed by fever and despair, heard the devastating news. His last hope, his very reason for living, had been extinguished. He believed Isolde had abandoned him, that she had refused to come. The crushing weight of this final perceived betrayal, combined with the poison ravaging his body, was too much for his heart to bear. With a final agonizing cry, "Isolde, my love!" he succumbed to his wound and his broken spirit. Tristan died. Moments later, the ship carrying Isolde, the true Isolde, docked. She rushed ashore, her heart pounding with a desperate hope to save her beloved. She ran to the castle, burst into the chamber where Tristan lay, and found him lifeless on the bed. His face was pale, his eyes closed, his hands still clutched a lock of her golden hair. The sight of his still form, the man for whom she had sacrificed everything, the other half of her soul, utterly shattered her. A profound, soul-deep cry of anguish tore from her throat. She threw herself upon his body, embracing him tightly, pressing her lips to his cold ones. She spoke to him, pleading for him to return, calling his name, her voice filled with an unbearable sorrow. But he was gone. The love potion which had bound them in life now seemed to demand that they be united in death. A life without Tristan was inconceivable to her. The very essence of her being was tied to his. Her heart, already broken by years of separation and longing, now faced the ultimate desolation. As she lay upon his body, the last flicker of life within her flickered and died. It was not a sudden, violent act, but a complete surrender. Her grief was so overwhelming, her love so absolute, that her body simply could not sustain life without him. She gasped a final breath, a quiet sigh, and then her heart ceased to beat. Isolde died of sorrow, of a love so potent it became a fatal affliction. Her death, intertwined with Tristan's, was the ultimate expression of their magical, unbreakable bond, a final choice to escape a world where they could not be together. This poignant love-death, or Liebestod, as it came to be known in later interpretations, resonated throughout medieval literature. A powerful example of a love so profound, it led to a tragic, self-willed demise, the very fabric of existence dissolving without the beloved. Their story, from the early French romances, like those of Berulle and Thomas, to the German epic by Gottfried von Strasbourg, cemented their legacy as the epitome of doomed but eternal love.